welcome back to the Over Manga Cast. My name is Sam, and unfortunately, Matt fell ill, and Jay's busy making sure he's not dead, so you've just got us. It's an Over Echo Chamber. How's it going, Jake?
No one can stop us now.
I'm expecting to see Matt typing in the Discord like, guys, you need to wrap it up. I don't even know what you're talking about, but you need to wrap it up. But yes, for this week with our other co-hosts gone, we have decided to indulge in something that is near and dear to both of our hearts, because I have been getting into gunpaw building as a method of not getting into Warhammer mini building.
You're fighting one addiction with another equally bad addiction.
I'm taking meth so I don't take cocaine, yes, but I've been thinking an awful lot about mecha designs, and I know that Jake spends about 60% of his waking time just conjuring up new mobile suits in his think brain. So we're going to be talking about mecha anime.
And the higher organization to send them into battle as well. Don't forget that part.
Of course. And so for this episode, we are going to be doing another top 5. We are going to be doing our top 5 mecha including series, or specifically how we are ranking these as a top 5 in an actual order on how they use mecha. It's not just something has mecha in it and therefore we're throwing it in. We specifically like how it is used.
Mm-hmm. I have my rankings on how much I like the series in general, but they all use mecha in important ways to their story. The mech have something to do with the narrative. If you removed them, then the story would no longer function.
Yeah, like speaking of 40k, I would have had 40k in here if we were just going based on mecha are in it, because while the Titans are really cool, they're not the most interesting thing about the universe, and they could be gone and you'd still have 40k. So with that in mind, another important thing, as is tradition here on the Over Manga Cast, we are not talking about just manga. And we're also not talking about what some nerds would strictly call mecha shows. I've got plenty of super robot shows in here.
You'll note we've not mentioned one per franchise, because there are a few mecha series that kind of dominate things. So unless we're a little bit loose with the rules, it's going to be hard to make a good top list.
We need to start digging into the dark corners of our memory for things that were mildly interesting, and none of you want to hear our takes on
Hanazuki no Miko.
Yeah, that's the one I was trying to think of. My brain blocked it out.
If that got on a best of list, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel. I enjoyed my time with that series, but I wouldn't mind having it back either.
If you recognized that obscure series, then you need to like us on your podcatcher of choice.
And YouTube, too.
Yes. But let's start off with the number 5 position on our top 5 list. And for me, this is going to seem like a bit of an oddball choice, but I figure I may as well get the weirdness out of the way immediately. My number 5 is Megas XLR.
I should have seen that coming with how much you like that show, quite rightly.
Look, dude, chicks dig giant robots.
It's a really good show.
You dig giant robots. I dig giant robots. Unironically, my introduction to the genre of just thing with giant robot in it, I hadn't heard of Gundam. I hadn't heard of God, what even else was out there at that point in time?
I mean, like, Robotech existed, but I'm not super familiar with it. I mean, there's things like Voltron and other...
I hadn't heard of Voltron. I hadn't heard of Gundam. Like, this was literally my gateway drug into mecha.
This is where the downward spiral started.
It is. And it really beautifully, the entire thing is like early aughts gasoline-soaked grunge in terms of aesthetics. So beautiful might be much. But it very efficiently combines Western cartoons and Japanese anime and puts it all around a giant robot with flame stickers on it.
Mhm. It's a really interesting series because it's one of the first series, to my recollection, that managed to pull off the simultaneously, serialized and episodic thing that a lot of Western cartoons really like doing these days. Like, a lot of the, like,
That
really
too.
good ones, like, like, Avatar comes to mind as a kind of series that is able to both be serialized and episodic. The Owl House, a couple of other shows, obviously not showing up on this list because they have a substantial lack of mecha.
Mhm.
I guess technically Avatar will eventually have mecha, but we don't talk about Legend of Korra on this podcast. No, but seriously, it was a really good early prototype for a style that Western animation has really taken to lately. Not my favorite, but really cool when it's pulled off well, and it has been pulled off well multiple times. And the fact that it's, oh god, as old as it is.
Yeah. Like, the fact that it could have the entire Jersey City skyline be reduced to rubble every episode, and then everything resets back to zero, but it still has an advancing plot was fun. And the design of the Megas is just cheesy glory. And Coop and Jamie are marvelous pro tags.
Oh,
So that's my number five. How about yours, Jake?
I'm going super basic with my number five. My number five is the granddaddy of all mecha, of all the entire giant robot genre, Mobile Suit Gundam, the original.
Gido Senshi
Gandamu.
Yandamu.
Uh, yeah, I mean, Mobile Suit Gundam is a pioneer in so many ways. In television in general, character death was not a thing that was done on purpose in long running television stories until Gundam came along.
And oh boy, did people die in that.
It's sort of funny because technically the body count of the original Mobile Suit Gundam is a little bit lower than I think its reputation would imply. You're thinking of Zeta,
Mm-hmm.
because everybody dies in Zeta.
Good old Kill 'em all Tamino.
The original Mobile Suit Gundam was a really important series. It was also pretty much the first time giant robots were depicted without basically superpowers. It's a really powerful story about both the greatness that humanity can reach to and the depths that we often fall to, and about choosing to be better than that. And, obviously, the franchise is still going. We're still telling stories in the Universal Century.
I think what you said about the heights humanity can reach and the depths that it can plunge to. Few things capture that quite as much as we made functioning orbital colonies that millions of people can live in relative comfort, expanding humanity into the stars. Our first step into a greater journey as a starfaring race where we can make the universe our own. And then we crashed one of them into Sydney, Australia.
Uh, you know, we gassed it first and then we crashed it into Sydney, Australia, just to maximize the tragedy and horror of it.
Yep.
And yeah, I
Nothing,
mean,
nothing like using the coolest thing you've ever done to kill as many people as possible to really highlight the black and white of humanity.
yeah, I mean, it's so funny because there are, so many cases of the hilarity of Gundam in that you know, it's the mobile suits are a metaphor for that. They're a vehicle for conflict, literally. And at the same time, there's also the sort of funny meta-contextual aspect of it, of these gritty war dramas talking about how miserable war is so popular in part because, ooh, cool robot.
I
Which,
mean, that's the whole meme. Wow, cool robot.
it's so fitting. And Gundam is just, and I mean, like, it's funny because a couple of years ago, I decided to rewatch the original Mobile Suit Gundam for the first time in my adult life. And one of the things that struck me is, despite the age when this series came out, there was like for example, there's a lot of squash and stretch in the animation.
We've
People's
also
eyes will jump out of their heads.
we've all seen that particular shot of RX-78's head where it's got a long face.
It it is at once a product of its time, but it's so mature and so modern. Like one of the very first scenes in the show is a bunch of giant robots infiltrate a space colony and start opening fire on, strictly speaking, a military production facility, but it's surrounded by civilian buildings that are getting caught in the crossfire.
Mhm.
And one of it is just a genuinely horrifying scene of the protagonist Amuro Ray running away from the bullets only to find a bunch of dead bodies, including his best friend's entire family. And she only barely didn't join them. You know, it's imagery that other Gundam series have tried to copy. I immediately think of Shin Asuka's Henshin from Gundam Seed Destiny, where they show his family dying every episode.
I forget which Gundam series it is, but it's the shot of the lady running away with the child, and then one of the shell casings from a mobile suit clocks her in the head and she dies.
That would be F91.
F91, yep.
There's something so, like, it's so subtle, it's so mature that it's chilling, and
Mhm,
it's like for all of the product of its time animation quirks, if you actually sit down and watch Mobile Suit Gundam, dubbed, subbed, whatever you like, the thing that you're going to take away from it is how harrowing it all is.
mhm.
It really is a great war as hell series. You imagine all the, and like a lot of other mech series, quite frankly, pretty much all but one of the rest of my top picks. It's like, wouldn't it be so cool to pilot these things? But one thing that the original Mobile Suit Gundam gets down is you're in a big metal death trap that is not your body and won't move the way you want it to because your reaction time is faster than the servos.
Mhm.
And how miserable that would have to be to
Tho
experience that.
those iconic Gundam shots of the night sky with the purple explosions in it, those are the reactors of mobile suits going critical and vaporizing the pilot.
Like, each one of those little purple spheres is a dead body.
Is a dead body that died in a truly horrific way.
It is it is such a powerful series when just sit down and give it a good hard look.
There's a reason it's been the gold standard for, like, what, 50 years?
Yeah, something like that. It's historic.
Indeed. And that's why my number 4 is a Gundam show. It might be a little bit more heavy-handed in the tone than the original MSG, because my number 4 is Mobile Suit Gundam 00. I got into Mecha because of Megas, but I got into Gundam because of Jake.
This is
Be
true.
and Jake had me watch Wing, and I love Wing. 00 was the first Gundam series that I watched kind of as it happened, and this is definitely like a rose-tinted glasses nostalgia moment,
Mm.
but experiencing it like that was, it was it was fun. I got to see this from the beginning. I was just as lost as everybody else. I got to, uh, experience all the memes with the community, "I am Gundam." While it's definitely got its flaws, in rewatching it recently, the thing that really struck me was it's kind of like a Greek play in that the heroes do something, and then a whole bunch of ancillary characters will comment on it like a chorus, and that kind of it's an interesting idea. It takes Gundam in different directions while still maintaining the appropriate aesthetics. The focus around the use of, like, solar energy and the resource wars, you uh, we have new types we have diet new types with the innovators.
New types by another name. I don't know why
Mhm.
Gundam is worried it's going to sue itself, but it doesn't like using new types outside of the Universal Century, even though they can.
It's Probably to make sure that the universal century is like self-contained from the alt timelines. We'll do everything else, but we won't do new types. We need to make sure that that's quote unquote contained. But and I also just I really love the suit designs
Oh,
in
yeah.
Double O. I don't know what it is, but I recently built a an overflag gunpla. Exia is one of my favorites Gundams. Just something about the design philosophy of them. It's so sleek. It's so they're like the electric cars of mobile suits, which again fits with the entire premise of
Yeah.
why the war has been happening.
Yeah, the theme of the actual story itself.
Mhm.
I'm not the biggest fan of Double O, but it's certainly not for lack of potential. Man, Double O, it's got so many things to love about it. Like not just Exia, but in particular, Exia's main weapon is so freaking cool. The way that Exia evolves into the titular Double O Gundam, the steps that are taken of in some ways like the main character is growing and maturing alongside his own mobile suit, like it
Because
becomes
he is Gundam.
it becomes more and more emphasized towards melee combat and, Setsuna having to accept the assistance of another person and that he can't do it alone. And, that's just surface level reading, and that's already, some really interesting stuff. And like I said, there are some things I don't like about it. I recall very
Uh,
distinctly when I was initially watching Double O as it was coming out, I actually quit the series because when they explained the main character's entire backstory in, I think, episode 7, and completely removed all mystery from his character whatsoever when he was basically supposed to be Hiro Yui 2.0, who we never got a backstory
mhm.
explanation for, that kind of infuriated me. But I did ultimately come back to the series, and that's another one where
Oh yeah,
like I never thought of like the idea of it being like a Greek play and the ancillary characters being a Greek chorus. That's a really good way of using a very big cast like Double O has, because Double O is very careful about having all of the factions be like distinct and have their reasons for doing what they do. Except for
yeah.
except for the Thrones guys, they're a little bit weird, but eh.
There's always going to be a bit of weirdness, and like full disclosure, I know that Double O is not like peak art by any means,
Hmm.
and it has flaws that I am going to critique an honorable mention for in like 20 minutes. So get ready for that. But still it's total nostalgia. It's totally me just going like wow, cool robot.
And that one is more like you're supposed to.
Uh-huh. But
You're supposed to wow cool robot that series.
I really like Double O. How about you, Jake? What's your number 4?
My number 4 has 3 titles depending on who you ask.
Oh boy.
It is either Zoids, Zoids New Century, or Zoids Zero. Um,
Ooh, good one.
but yeah, it is the second Zoids anime. The first one released internationally, thus the first one I experienced. Yeah, Zoids is a series I bumped back into accidentally a little while ago, and it's one that's kind of been in the back of my mind ever since. Zoids plays with mecha in a completely different way. The thing that was kind of eye-opening to me as I started watching clips from mostly from New Century, but a little bit of other Zoids anime, is the battles almost have a bit of a feel of a car chase because they're basically all quadrupeds and they're all like running at full speed forward, and it has this very different like combat aesthetic other mecha series. And then New Century is a quite fun series because one of the fun bits is Zoids has some freaking bonkers lore that never comes up, but like one of the things that no one ever really talks about is that the Zoids are functionally indestructible circa each other. I think charged particle beams are the only things that'll like permanently damage a Zoid's armor. And it's like that's supposed to make it more kid friendly, but it means war is eternal, which is
Yeah.
more horrifying because I know in Chaotic Century they do actually address the fact of civilian casualties are a thing. That's a choice.
When the actual belligerents can't die, but the civilians can.
Yeah, that's a choice. But yeah, New Century's like thing of them because the Zoids themselves are so freaking safe, they turn it into a competition and it's just a straight shonen, you know. It's this really cool blend of it is simultaneously a super robot series because the Zoids are alive because bonkers Zoid lore. Seriously, look up where Zoids come from. It's insane. Um so it's a super robot series on the one hand, but it's also a giant robot series because despite the Zoids being alive, they don't really have superpowers. You know, like everything they can do is very measurable. And on top of that, one cool aspect that the Zoid series has is it's a great series for gearheads. I know
Mm.
some of the Zoid series weren't very popular because they leaned more into the Zoids being alive stuff, but you know, like one of the coolest things from a New Century is Liger Zero getting the upgrade parts and seeing how they could be used in new ways, picking out which one was the right one for this particular battle. There are also sort of fun moments where it's like you can kind of dive a little bit into Bit's character because you'd think he'd either favor Zero Schneider or Zero Panzer because he's a hot-blooded shonen protagonist, but he seems to be more pragmatic and usually favor Zero Jaeger, which says something about him. He knows that the two augment parts that Liger Zero is most comfortable with is Schneider and Jaeger, and Jaeger is just has more useful utility with its speed. So he tends to use that one a lot for filler fights, and it's one of those ones where it's like this like finding upgrade parts for the Zoids and tinkering with them.
Yeah, it's got a sort of modularity that you'd expect from like a video game.
It's just it sparks the imagination. You imagine what it's like you get a custom Zoid, right? Like you imagine your
Mhm.
custom Zoid and all the different options you could have for it, swapping out for different situations. Like it's built for that sort of
Yeah, everything the characters don't do is something that you could have done, and that makes you think about it.
mhm. And it because of it, it just lingers in the mind. And again, yeah, sort of crazy thing that I never really noticed because it's like, you start playing out a Zoid battle in your head, and it's like it has all of the aesthetics of a car chase and a gunfight at the same time. It's like
And also being huge flippin' robots,
and they're
man.
giant animal robots. Like, come on. It's one of those ones where it's like I totally get why they aim it at a younger audience because it is one of those sort of the inner child in you is going to love this if they still exist, you know?
Keep this in mind for my number 2. Jake, I know you've got some things on your list that are double ups. I'm gonna do this right now with my number 3.
Okay.
Witch from Mercury and Wing. Like I said before, Gundam Wing was introduced to me by Jake, the Gundam Wing fan of all time.
Yes. I
No,
will accept this mantle.
number 1 Wing stan.
I have analyzed that series more than any sane human ever should.
And being introduced to that from such like a hyper fan, I'm sure listeners, you've had people who are hyper fans of something uh insist that you need to consume this bit of media. Hell, I've been that guy.
Yes. Yes. And
Hey
I have
Jake,
appreciated it pretty much all every time.
What's your opinion of Dark Souls?
Listen, we're not doing that episode. We're doing the mech episode.
Indeed. But to get back to the point, God, I adored Wing. I was definitely too young to really understand it, which is why I need to do a rewatch of it.
Fair, so was I when I first watched it.
And still, you like latched onto it so thoroughly. I really need to do a rewatch of it and just absorb all of it because Gundam is always a war story, but Wing is like it's a political drama first and foremost.
Hmm.
And I love that shit. Political dramas are fun as hell. Untangling the web of conspiracies and alliances. It's a ton of fun. And the designs are kicking. You can't give me a giant mecha with angel wings and expect me not to fall in love. God, Wing Zero Custom is so good.
The designs in Wing, from the characters to the machines themselves to the spaces they inhabit, as extra as humanly possible to the series' benefit.
It's a Gundam. And Witch from Mercury, another example of taking all of the Gundam aesthetic and doing it just slightly differently. Like, it was a school drama for quite a
The
while.
entire first season.
The entire first season, it was girls in school doing school things, but also there's a Gundam show happening in the background. And then episode 12 happened.
And then episode 12 happened, and the entire first season was just a prologue to the most Gundam-ass Gundam that has ever been.
Uh-huh. I gotta applaud that. I pulling the wool over our eyes for that long and also not making it feel like an ass pull.
Yeah, because the menace is always there. There's always that undercurrent of something is wrong here, you know?
Literally anytime Prospera is on screen, you should feel worried. And they do an excellent job of hammering that home.
You know, and funnily enough, another thing that Witch from Mercury does really well is, even with all of that, there's no abject evil either.
Mhm.
You know, like, everybody, even if some people are motivated by baseline greed, everybody's motivated by something real. You
And
know?
maybe this is like my millennial talking, but one of the things that I really liked about it is that it focuses a lot on the generation after the major conflict. Like, there was the war that created the status quo of the world, and then all of our primary characters are people who were born in and grew up in that status quo. The underlying reasons behind why the world is this way is something that happened in the past. It doesn't matter to them. What matters to them is right now. And as someone who wit- as someone who's witnessed a lot of world-shaking events as a
Mm.
millennial, I simultaneously envy the younger generation, and I really don't. And Witch from Mercury does a great job of showing what what that generation can and maybe should do.
Living in a post-change world and trying to learn from mistakes you personally didn't experience.
Mhm. Yeah, that's my, double up on number 3 because I'm totally cheating right now. How about you, Jake?
Well, my number 3 is a little bit cheaty too. So, this one is, I'm going to name a specific series because it's the one that lives in the forefront of my mind, but this is going to apply to a broader swath. Like, everything I'm going to say about this, circa its mech aspects, applies to all of the various Tokusatsu and Power Rangers series. I gotta give it up for Power Rangers Dino Thunder, my favorite Power Rangers series. It's sort of funny to think that with how deeply tied the combining mecha are with, specifically, it's because of Power Rangers, because by the time the Super Sentai series had come to the United States in the form of Power Rangers, they had already had an established tradition of the mecha, but that actually isn't universal in all Sentai shows.
Mhm.
Particularly the older ones didn't tend to have it. But there is a fun thing, a fun aspect of using mecha in a tokusatsu show like that, in a Sentai show, in Power Rangers. I think of the way that these things get used in a story, and I think of Dino Thunder because I think Dino Thunder is a really good series. I wouldn't say that it's underrated because I think a lot of people agree with that sentiment, but it's got a bit too much of a breakneck pace. But like, something that it's really good at is mythologizing.
Yeah.
You might recall in our Go Go Loser Ranger episode, I said that that was a shonen, not a sentai.
Mhm.
I made that distinction. And the one of the biggest things missing from Go Go Loser Ranger is there's a specific kind of repetition that Sentai is really good at that just makes all of the good brain chemicals.
All the goody goods.
And it's like there's a reason why there's the transformation sequence. Like you have the unsuited fight with the character actors doing their martial arts performances. Then you have the choreographed transformation sequence. Then you have a suit fight. Then you have the suit fight conclude with probably some kind of combining team weapon. And then that escalates into the monster growing to giant size. And there is a oft repeated transformation sequence for a bunch of robots combining into a human shaped mecha.
And you do that for 1,000 Sundays until the dusters get annoyed with you.
Well, that, but it's like mythologizing is the best word for it. Like there's like tradition, there is a sense of like grandeur, and like it really is amazing how that sort of thing can never get old with just minor tweaks of context. And it's like, you do it for like 50 episodes and eventually you got to go on to a new aesthetic. You
Mhm.
get a new team, you get a new theme, and you move on. And and it's like a lot of times some of the most satisfying things is when the old teams come back and team up with the new current team.
Nothing is as cool as Big Bro showing up to back you up.
Like there's something comforting about it.
Mhm.
Like it's a very heroes save the day kind of thing.
What was the Power Rangers movie that came out recent-ish?
Oh, yeah, I think it's just called Power Rangers.
Yeah, and it's got, like, the Green Ranger and I think the Yellow Ranger in, like, a cameo during the post-credit scene?
No, 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 it was Jason David Frank, Tommy Oliver, who was the Green Ranger, and Kimberly, I don't remember her actress's name. Amy Jo
Mm.
Johnson, who was the original, well,
Pink
the
Ranger, yeah.
original Pink Power Ranger. It's worth noting there were Pink Rangers in Sentai long before we got an
Yeah.
adaptation of Zhu Ranger, but you get the idea.
We're talking about Power Rangers, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's that same, Leonardo DiCaprio clicking his fingers and whistling at the screen energy. But, mythologizing is the best word for it because even in, like, we're talking purely about Power Rangers here. Even in the original Power Rangers, despite how cheesy it is, Zordon feels like something big and important.
There's a sense of grandeur to it that like there's a legend to it. A lot of
Mhm.
times, like even with
This is
Sentai that
something
are
after 10,000 years, I am
yeah.
free!
And like even with Sentai and Power Ranger series that are mostly tech based, there's almost always this sense that like this is a battle that goes back to like the dawn of humanity and before. Um
I mean,
I
hey, the original Power Rangers, it like Dino Thunder really exemplified it, but the original Power Rangers, the Zords were based off of dinosaurs.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, like, the Zords in Dino Thunder are all entirely mechanical, and yet it's a power that harkens back millions of years. The villain is a modern day scientist who Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde himself, and yet there's still like this sense of like an ancient foe. And I mean, like, one of the really cool moments is in one of the early episodes, Mesogog captures Tommy, and Tommy makes a comment, something to the effect of, "Why don't you just want to rule the world like all the other psychos?" Something to that effect. And it's like it's one of those ones where it's like there's so much to this. Like even if Dino Thunder was the very first Power Ranger series, and Tommy wasn't a legacy character but just a mysterious mentor character with a past in this conflict, like it works either way.
That's the power of a well-paced generational storyline.
Tokusatsu in general does that. Dino Thunder is one of the best. The layer of you have to do the no suit fight, you have to do the transformation, you have to do the suit fight, the combined weapons, you combine the mecha, and then the mecha fight the big monster and it blows up too. And it's like you know,
And it's morphin time.
it is so like integral because it has been contextualized in so many fun and creative ways that you see any part of it and you immediately know what you're in for, and there's
And
something special about that.
it has the familiarity of ritual.
Mhm.
And I don't just mean ritual as in like a spiritual sense. I mean it is in like it is a thing you do every day, a habit that makes a day for you.
Yeah,
It's like making coffee or taking a shower is a solid choice for your number 3. Moving into number 2, on our top 5 list, I've got another completely off kilter choice.
excellent.
Lancer. I'm not going for a manga, an anime, a manhwa, or nothing else. I'm doing a TTRPG in this bitch.
Well, that is a swerve, I like it.
Yes, the tabletop role playing game Lancer. It is entirely built around the idea that you are the pilot of a mecha. And importantly, you are a mercenary that can be hired by any number of mega corporations controlling humanity. And the more work you do from them, the greater level of license you get. And that lets you use more of their IP in your machine. And this is why I said, remember that modularity from Zoids,
Mm.
because Lancer is all about building your mecha. It's about being given this swath of choices all across a beautifully illustrated book. The illustrations are done by Abaddon, the guy who writes Kill 6 Billion Demons. So you know, this is some peak art right here. And you're given this massive array of choice, and you can use it to just Lego piece together your mecha. And it is one of the most fully realized games for a genre that I've played. Like, I've played a lot of TTRPGs, and I've got pros and cons, complaints and critiques about all of them. Like, I love Exalted, but it's first and foremost a wuxia kung fu action game, but it wants to be everything else in a grand mythological epic. I really like Dungeons and Dragons, but it's first and foremost a tactical war game. And the role playing storytelling aspects of it are kind of grafted on over like 40 years of community mutation. Lancer had a vision and it stuck to that vision and it made it true. And it's all there for free with one of the best companion apps I've ever had the pleasure of using.
Yeah, we
Like,
only ever played one game of Lancer, and I wanna do it again.
uh-huh. And God, I loved it so much. I sought out ways to pay them for it because it's free. They're just giving it away for free. I'm like, no, take my money. You deserve it.
Well, we want you to make more.
Lancer takes the idea of having a big fucking robot that is your expression of how you change this world and makes it entirely your own, entirely within your power, and makes that meaningful through the medium of the TTRPG. And that's why I love it, dude. It is
Yeah,
so good.
it's absolutely a masterclass in, genre. In experiencing genre in a new way, too.
Yeah, that it, like I said, has it had a vision and it made that vision reality. And I love that. Like, sure, maybe in like 10 years it'll mutate into something else, but that's just going to be the background radiation of the gaming community mutating things as it's
Yeah,
want to do.
reacting to what it is currently.
Mhm. So yeah, that's my number 2. How about you, Jake?
Um, well, mine is definitely not a heavy one, except yes, it is because it's Mobile Suit Gundam 0080 War in the Pocket. War in the Pocket is, in my opinion, so like obviously Witch from Mercury gets brutal after episode 12. And it never really relents to its benefit. But I gotta tell you, no Gundam series has ever affected me like War in the Pocket has.
Mhm.
This series is genuinely soul crushing. And there are so many parts of it I don't want to spoil. Watch War in the Pocket. It's an OVA. It's like 4 episodes. Like it's so worth your time.
Oh, it's not even a long OVA.
No, it's short. But in that time, you get this whole situation of, you know, it's the very end of the 1-year war. The war, they don't, nobody knows this, but the war is going to end in a couple of days. And there is this completely stupid conflict over a mobile suit that will never officially see action on the Federation side, that a bunch of people are dying and killing over. And it's so that's already tragic, but the thing that War in the Pocket does that's so special is, how I mentioned that whole "ooh, cool robot" problem that Gundam tends to have? The main character is 8 years old and wants to
Oh.
see the cool robots, and he
Oh.
gets his wish monkey's paw style. I
Oh.
don't wanna spoil how everything goes, because it is a genuinely heart-wrenching, tragic, incredible series, but I will tell you what happens at the very end, because this isn't really a spoiler. This is just an outstanding moment.
Does it have
Be
as many children as Witch from Mercury's Bob the Builder arc?
Yes, technically, but they're all alive.
Okay.
At the end of the series, the 1-year war has officially ended and all the shooting has stopped. Up to this point in the series, the main character, Al, had been talking basically every day, even as the story had been going on, about how cool the war was and how they wished they could get their hands on like a shell casing from a battle, or a piece from a mobile suit, or a soldier's uniform. This is their thing. They love this stuff.
Mhm.
And the war has been declared over. The shooting has stopped. The treaty has signed, and there is an announcement at school about the end of the war. And the principal is giving this, like, it's not a bad speech, but it's a lot of platitudes. It's stated earnestly, but it's not really much of anything, and it's talking about how hopefully this horrible tragedy that we've all experienced will teach us to be better, and we won't let something like this happen again. And you can imagine the 8-year-old who got a little too close to the 1-year war at its most terrible, well, second most terrible and violent part, is not taking the whole situation very well.
Mhm.
And he starts to cry. And like it's slight at first, but the more he's hearing like all of this like distant and clinical speech about what happened, he starts losing it more and more. And the most gut-wrenching thing, one of his friends pats him on the back and says, "Don't worry, Al. I'm sure there'll be another war soon."
Whew.
And, like, I'm tearing
God,
up just thinking about that scene, you
God,
know?
that's gonna sound terrible on the recording. I need a pop filter. Do not woof into your microphones.
It's a Gundam series that just so perfectly addresses one of Gundam's own unintended flaws of "Ooh, cool robot," because, like, the whole thing is about someone who idealizes war, gets to experience it, and sees what it's really all about.
Kids don't know what consequence is.
They don't
Kid
understand permanence.
Children see cool thing and think, "Wow, that's cool." And not appropriately educating children to the consequences of the cool thing is a societal problem that should be addressed, but
Yeah, a
what
common and long-running societal problem, but, like,
Mhm.
and I mean, like, the other thing is, let's face it, this shit is cool. We're into this stuff because it is cool. But, like,
I
you
got
know
into this because of Megasex OR, which is the most meathead, brain dead. Look at this.
harmless. Yeah, no, and, like, It's one of those ones where it's like it's very sobering because it reminds you that it's really only beautiful and exciting and fun when it is both fictional and at a distance,
Mhm.
you know? And someone who had had that experience of it, seeing it up close, and like just the worst part of it all is I think we're like what 5 years away from the Deleuze fleet crisis when the Federation gets nuked again. You know,
Yeah.
like, because the thing is, another war will start up again because here's these kids who are going to grow up into teenagers who are going to be the next generation of teenage soldiers because it's still an anime after all, and they're looking at ooh cool robot and they're not learning the lesson.
And that's the thing that Witch from Mercury addressed, which is this idea of growing up in a post massive change world. And now your entire future is built around how the world reacts to this crisis that occurred before you were even born, or while you were too much of a blobby baby to do anything about it.
Yeah, and also how you will react to those things.
Hmm.
What are you going to do with the hindsight? How are you going to take things? And just what a character journey to see this bright-eyed kid.
Become become a, a Shinji Ikari
Yeah,
before he reaches 10 years old.
yeah, it's
Oh, poor thing.
it's a harrowing series, and it's an excellent Gundam show on top of that because it's where the Alex comes from, one of the coolest mobile suits from the Universal Century. It's a
Hmm.
cool robot.
It's a super cool robot.
It results in the climax of the story. I'm not spoiling that part, but it's not a happy ending.
Gee, a happy ending in Gundam, we can only wish.
Oh.
All right, so before we go into number one, how about we go through some honorable mentions of shows and various media properties on here? Um, I think it's notable that three of the ones I have in honorable mentions can all go in the God, what could have been category. The oh, but for lost potential lamentations folder.
My favorite. I can fix it.
You can. Hey, Jake, how do you feel about Code Geass?
Oh, Code Geass. Uh, I want to like you as much as certain people on the internet do, but you'd have to actually be good first.
A terrorists, and then the bunny girl kicks him in the face.
Oh god. Don't even get me started on the freaking second season.
I mean
Ugh.
that did create the immortal quote from your mother of a Playboy bunny terrorist.
I remember that because I had been TiVoing. That's how old that series is. God damn it! I had been TiVoing Code Geass at the time and watching it after school. I was in high school. Oh boy.
But yeah, Code Geass is on there. Definitely for the power of wow, cool robot.
Oh yeah, no, great mech designs.
Mhm.
Uh, Great mech designs, and honestly, his story is just overflowing with potential that is just completely squandered.
Speaking of that, Darling in the Franks.
I have had the privilege of watching everyone else burn on this ship. I have watched from a distance with great amusement.
I got about 5 episodes into Darling, and I liked it, and I saw where it was going.
And
The
then it
whole
didn't.
the whole pedal and stamen control system thing, it's like taking this as like a puberty sex metaphor and just ripping every
It's Alice in Wonderland, but with both genders and mecha.
exactly, exactly. And like it was fun and the mech designs were cool. And then it just s- something about it, maybe I sensed the direction it was going, but I lost track after episode 5 and then they Gynaxed it.
Oh,
But nothing will ever personally hurt me in the lost potential department quite as much as I'll know is Zero.
yeah, I knew that one was coming.
I feel personally fucking attacked by I'll know is Zero.
Oh,
You can't have one of the coolest, most gripping cliffhanger season ends of all time.
and then undo it in the first 5 minutes of the second season's first episode.
Every character who gets shot in the head in that season ender shows up in the opening of season 2.
Got better.
That, ah,
That's another one that I got to watch from the sidelines as it burned.
oh my god, season 2 of How Noah Zero gutted me like few other things have. So that's why I'm putting it in the honorable mentions, because wow, it could have been so good, but it really wasn't. Hiroyuki Sawano killing on the track, though.
It's got great music. I know more about Al No Zero's music than I do about the actual show. I was going to mention Code Geass as an honorable mention because God, I wish I liked it more. But yeah, no. One of my honorable mentions isn't even actually a lost potential thing. It's just one of those ones where it's a cute show. It's got mecha that are important to the narrative, but it's not. It's basically fluff. It was introduced to me by a good friend of mine. It is Full Metal Panic.
Yep.
It's part spy thriller, it's part rom com, it's part mech series, and somehow it all blends basically perfectly. Never really goes anywhere, is really the only complaint I have about it, but it wasn't really meant to either.
My entire experience with Full Metal Panic is Jake thought one of the anti-piracy disclaimers at the beginning of a DVD was really funny, and he showed the whole show to me on that premise. We got through like a disc of the DVD and then we fell asleep.
And like the funniest part of all is I have no memory of this interaction. I don't remember that on the DVD. Because the friend who showed me the series had lent me the DVD that I didn't own it. So I don't remember that.
And that's why you're getting a cruise missile down your chimney, Jake.
Oh my gosh. And then another honorable mention for me. This one is almost an honorable mention because I kind of forgot it because I don't know if I would have maybe put it on the list instead. I don't know where I would have put it because it's such a weird series, but shout out to the Big O.
Yeah.
In the name of God, ye not guilty.
I really wish I watched Big O when I had a greater appreciation for just weird media.
Yeah, and like
So I should really watch it now is what I'm saying.
yeah, you really should. No, it is such a wacky series, and yet it's also like calm and sober and put together. It has an outstanding aesthetic. The mecha in it are very different from a lot of other mech series, particularly mech anime. Tends to have very mobile machines, lots of verniers, lots of fancy footwork. Whereas the Big O it's just a big honking robot, and it will punch you in the face with its giant pile bunker.
It'll give you the pile bunker in the Big O final stage.
God damn it. The mech itself is so physical, you know.
Mhm.
It never doesn't feel like an absurdly over-engineered giant robot. And also it reveals that we are all actually tomatoes, which is an immutable truth we all have to come to accept.
I too watched the VTuber Doki Bird. All right, and I think that is a a good point to talk about our number one favorite mech anime. And bookends. I started with a super robot show. I'm ending with a super robot show.
These are surprising or original, just so you know.
Was it going to be anything else but Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann?
Yeah, it's Gurren Lagann. The instant we started talking about this, I already knew what Sam's number one was going to be, and quite frankly, he knows what my number one was going to be.
Yeah, so Jake, you can tell us about Gundam Wing in a moment.
Yeah.
What Jake was saying earlier about Mobile Suit Gundam, about how it exemplifies both how high humanity can go and how far it can fall, TTGL does not care about the fall. It only cares about the high. And then it's like, you know what? Is that actually as high as we can go? No, I think we can go a little higher.
Let's just go higher than that. No, see, that's sort of the funny thing because the thing for me is it kind of does do the lows too.
Mm,
And the fun thing about Gurren Lagann is like it is one of the best examples of fiction like simplifies and exaggerates to illustrate a point. And Gurren Lagann does not care about verisimilitude. It does not care about being believable. It doesn't care about anything except for conveying its core ideas. Because Lord
it
Genome and the Anti Spiral are the diametric opposite of the protagonists.
mhm. Yeah, it only cares about conveying the message. It is pure art in that regard.
Yes.
And I can never escape it because it rewired my brain chemistry at a very impressionable age. I watched this shit at 3 AM on summer break when I was, like, 13. I I was basically just pressing molds into my brain matter in the shape of a Drell.
Drills to the brain, I don't think are very healthy for you, especially not at that age.
It worked for Denji.
You know, I can't argue with that.
It doesn't work for Denji,
Eh,
you know.
debatable.
Chainsaws to escape the bad thoughts.
It makes the bad things go away.
But yeah, no, TTGL is my number one, and it really hammers home the our criteria for this list because it's like, how does it use mecha? Gurren Lagann uses mecha as a vehicle to drill home the point of the message. The message being that life is worth living, you can always go further, and even if you can't get where you're trying to go to, the effort is inherently worth it because it will be inspirational to those who will come after you. Growth is both deeply personal and a communal thing. When you grow, you help others grow around you. And that is the sort of and that's the sort of human life affirming message that can only be delivered by a giant 20-faced robot being piloted by 20 people in skin tight bodysuits slamming a giant galaxy into the face of the very concept of antipathy. God, I love that show.
What you're saying is it's very subtle.
No, it isn't, and that is why it's beautiful. So yeah, that's my number one. How about you, Jake?
Yeah, you might have noticed I didn't say much about Wing when it was on Sam's list. That's because it's my number one. So yeah, no, Gundam Wing is an extraordinary series. I've always said that it is honestly more of a character study than it is a mech series, and yet if you removed the mechs from Wing, it wouldn't be Wing anymore. Not just because you lose the title, it wouldn't be Mobile Suit Gundam Wing without the Mobile Suit Wing Gundam, but the core concepts that the series tries to get to, what is right, what is justice, and particularly the aspects of peace. You know, like there's something very sobering that, you know, I mean, it came up in Go Go Loser Ranger. It's something that other Gundam series like Gundam Seed and Seed Destiny have touched on, and Double O for that matter. But like one of the things that Wing was really good at, and funnily enough, Wing and Gurren Lagann being our top two probably says a lot about why we're such good friends, because there's a lot of sharing brain cells here. Wing
Oh yeah.
distills this, and it's like it does it in a sort of like quiet and subdued manner, as opposed to like a big action screamy kind of way. But
As opposed to grabbing
a
the
galaxy.
as opposed to grabbing the embodiment of despair and slamming it face first into a galaxy, puny god style.
Yeah, like instead of that, it's like these insane Shakespearean caricatures perfectly molded into the shape of the world around them, waxing poetic about the deep fundamental nature of what it means to live in a state of peace, and like
Mhm.
a lot of, it's one of those series that actually does like to give at least its own personal conclusions to certain questions it raises. Like, for example, one of the things that was a major point in Wing that ended up cropping up in a lot of other series subsequent is it's cool to be a pacifist, but you have to be able to defend yourself and the people you care about, or else you're not a pacifist, you're a victim.
Hey, Jake, who's your favorite Dragon Ball character? Parallels!
Look, I like what I like, okay?
Like but I razz with love. It's
Yeah, yeah,
it's a
yeah.
very, very good aesthetic.
Things like the Zero system, just like the incredibly like heady concepts. It's a very quiet yet very high concept show that, in much of the same way that Gurren Lagann does, the way that it gets to its point is by it's as extreme a distilled metaphor as Gurren Lagann, but instead of just belting it from the heavens with all of your might, it instead creates a bunch of extremely specific rational agents to Shakespeareanly perform in the most dramatic, melodramatic fashion imaginable these deep inner concepts of the human condition. you know how do you react to the future? What do you do to change it? What don't you do? um
Man, Gundam sure does love its theatrics. It's like Wing is a Shakespearean play, Double O is a Greek chorus. It's like
and like the Universal Century are all in the
a
most
tragedy.
they're all in the most classical sense space operas.
Mhm.
With all the drama that comes along with it. Yeah, no, Gundam is a wide-ranging series, but to me, the Gundam series that got me into it is the Gundam series that every time I rewatch it, I learn something new. I like the fact that Trey's was manipulating everyone, even when he had no power, he was still the puppet master. Blew my mind when I watched it when I was old enough to actually follow what was going on, because oh my god, it is complex. I think technically the only unambiguously canon Gundam manga is the Gundam manga that tied into Wing, because um, funny story about Wing, and I might have mentioned this in another episode, but there were a couple of episodes that were clip shows that weren't supposed to be clip shows. They were actually supposed to be that manga, and Wu Fei's character doesn't work without his section of those two anthology episodes. So
I want to do the meme, but we've been here long enough.
yeah.
Jake knows why it's called Nataku's Dragon Fang.
I know why why Wu Fei calls the suit Nataku.
We will have an Old Man Yells at Cloud for that eventually.
Someday. Once I get back to writing those scripts, I have a lot of things to complain about. But Gundam Wing isn't one of them. And frankly, neither is Gurren Lagann. That's also a great series.
God, I love Gurren Lagann so much. It is as close to a perfect piece of media as I can think of. Like, obviously nothing is perfect. It's got its flaws and its hiccups, but it is, even when it starts Gynaxing it, it is almost a perfect parabola of acceleration and buildup, and it's all servicing the plot.
No, like Gurren Lagann is actually a really good example of Gynaxing is not a de facto negative. It's just an aesthetic, because the Big O also has a Gynax ending that makes perfect sense it makes perfect sense if my theory about what's actually going on is true and we are all in fact tomatoes, which I'm pretty sure we are all in fact tomatoes, but
Mhm.
that's another matter entirely. We'll talk about the Big O eventually, I'm sure.
It's like I don't know another series where you can uppercut the moon so hard that that you break your ex out of a self-destructive depression funk.
And that's like the beginning of the last season, not the end of it.
Exactly. Uh I Gurren Lagann turned me into the love-pilled hope cell that I am today. No matter how much of a cynical old man I become, I always will think that things can get better, and it is because of that idiot kid with his stupid cape and his drill. So yeah, that's our top 5 mecha properties because we've dived well beyond manga and anime at this point.
We have a TTRPG on the list. It's fine. Matt's
Exactly.
not here to yell at us for it.
I'm distinctly reminded of the bit in the promo where he's like, "I don't even know what this podcast is anymore."
Yeah, I mean that's over echo chamber for you.
So, how about we wrap this up with just some, "Hey, cool robot."
Yeah, we'll just rapid fire some cool mecha and why you should love them.
Mhm. Uh, Basically all of mine are from a Gundam series, because my number 5 is Gundam Barbados from Iron Blooded Orphans. God, that thing is so cool. And it is much like Shadow the Hedgehog, it is designed to be as edgy as possible. It takes every rounded corner of its predecessor and turns it into a jagged spike, and I kinda love it for that.
It's also edgy in narrative too and in function. So
Mhm.
God, it is Shadow the Hedgehog, isn't it?
Hey, how many Gundams can say that their pilots have had sex in the cockpit? What's your number 5, Jake?
I'm actually gonna go with one that's a little bit. This is one of the coolest mecha in my opinion, but also there's a hint of sentimental value to it. It's the Red Blade Liger, a
Mm,
from the Zoids series specifically. Incidentally, Zoids New Century. Trust me, not all of them will be from series I mentioned in my top 5 series. Yeah, the Red Blade Liger was always a Zoid that I absolutely freaking adored. It was just the coolest darn thing to my late elementary, early middle school self. And really cool thing, the model kit for it was only available in the Philippines, apparently. Um, and my brother got me it, and I have that. I
hell
own
yeah.
a Red Blade Liger model, and you'll know it's mine because I assembled it when I was a wee tyke, and it was almost perfect, but I made one wee little mistake. One of its fangs didn't actually get into the mouth before it got permanently closed.
I was gonna say, it surely can't be any worse than the scuff on my most recent Gunpla.
The wings were the wrong way. Yeah, no, my Red Blade Liger is missing its, I believe, yeah, its left fang, its left saber fang. So it's that's mine specifically. Like my Red Blade Liger totally like took a shot to the jaw and lost the fang, and it wasn't because I, you know, misplaced the part and didn't realize it until it had been permanently snapped closed, because when you assemble Zoids, you play for keeps. That was something I learned with the Red Blade Liger.
Huh, alright, so for my number 4, this was actually a real this was a real tooth grinder for me because in a top 5 list with the extremities that the internet expects, anything lesser than 3 is shit. Even though there's plenty of things that didn't even make it to 5, like, come on, guys.
It's either number 1 or it's number negative infinity. Those are the only options.
Exactly. But it is with that in mind that I say with a lot of caution, my number 4 is the Overflag from Gundam 00 because, wow, that is my favorite mass production mobile suit. And considering that by the time of 00, Sunrise was kind of leaning into, so we can continue with the theming of war is hell, but also, wow, Gunplas sell like hotcakes. We can really get away with damn cool robot.
Uh,
So they were really leaning into it at that point, and God, I love the overflag so much. I don't know why it's specifically that one either. Like the flag, its predecessor is really cool.
It's also a fighter jet, so I like it.
Eh, It's a
You know how
fighter.
hard it was not to put Ace Combat on my list?
Yeah, but like while they operate like mechs, those are still jets.
I know.
Look, dude, I wanted to put Transformers on here. Those don't even have pilots. Those are just dudes.
In Soviet Russia, mech pilots you. Actually, wait, no, Gundam does that. Gundam has a lot of that. Never mind.
But yeah, I love modular frames. I love Transformers, so I love robots that change into different shapes. And the fact that the overflag can shift from a fighter jet into this really sleek um mecha monster is so cool.
She got them hips.
And it's got an hourglass shape. Like I'm a simple man. I really mucked up my gunpla of it, but I made it work, and that's the only thing that matters.
It all worked out in the end.
That it did. All right, Jake, number 4 for you.
My number 4 is going to be a little bit of a swerve. And 100%, the reason for this, I'm actually going to give the reason for this before I tell you what the number 4 technically is.
Mhm.
This is a group of things that basically take my number 4. And the reason why this one specific is 100% because of recency bias.
Uh-huh.
It is Good Cool Kaiser VSX. And since basically nobody is going to know what that is, it's the most powerful mecha from Lupin Ranger versus Pato Ranger, the Sentai I had been watching immediately before we did the reading on Go Go Loser Ranger. Basically, the category of mech that it is, man, when you have a series with combining mecha and you get that big epic battle against like a super boss that all of the mechs have to come together and you get like it's not just a normal mech. It's like there's a term for it in Power Rangers, the Ultra Zord. You know, it's bigger, it's bigger and badder than Mecha, or that bigger and badder than Megazord. It's the Ultra Zord. Those are some of the most hype moments, and I will say recency bias 100% is a factor here, but there is also something really cool about the fact that in Lupat, the two Sentai teams are active enemies of each other. So when they have to combine forces and combine all of their mecha into one super mecha to fight one of the villains, it is an absolute hype moment of just, it's just so cool. It is good cool.
Hell yeah, brother.
It looks so stupid and yet so awesome at the same time. It has too many arms and I love it.
Hey, stupid cool is my favorite.
Yes, it is. I can confirm this.
And I want to pause here because I don't want that to be coloring my next pick in my top 5 favorite mechas, because this thing isn't stupid cool. It's legitimately just really fucking cool. And that's the Wing Zero custom.
Yeah, there it is.
You can't give me a giant robot with angel wings and expect me not to fall in love.
And like the angel wings shed glowing holographic white bird feathers. Like, it's so extra.
And it gets yeeted into the sun at the end so that it can't taint the world with its violence anymore.
Oh,
Holy shit. Jake, you talked about how like Zero, or how about how Wing addresses some of the same themes as TTGL while being more subtle. Occasionally it's just really not. It's not subtle at all.
Hey, do you think that Hiro is a guardian angel or something? I don't know. Anyway, Endless Waltz is a masterpiece, and I will be taking no questions at this time.
I think that somehow Celestial Being didn't go hard enough.
Where are your biblically accurate angel wings?
On the O Gundam, which doesn't even show up in the actual main series, outside of a few flashbacks from Setsuna.
Oh, actually, yeah, you're right. That's true. Hilarious.
Very hilarious. All right, what's your number 3, Jake?
My number 3 is the Gelgoog from Mobile Suit Gundam, and actually from a lot
Hell
of
yeah.
Universal Century series. The Gelgoog is such an underrated mobile suit. And this is entirely from a perspective of, it's like if I could build a mobile suit core with, resource restraints, I'm trying to rebuild the Federation after the 1 Year War, or, combining a bunch of different sci-fi series, and I'm allowed to use 1 Year War technology and such. The fact that Xeon was able to make so many freaking Gelgoogs with how many no resources that they had goes to show how cheaply this thing can be made. And it was basically on par with the RX 78. And it was being used not just fairly effectively 7 years later in the Grips conflict, but it saw action all the way to the Laplace incident. And it wasn't just cannon fodder.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the Gelgoog is, there's the whole thing is like, do you love the Gundams, or do you love, and like so many people love the Gundams, or like custom models and stuff, but then there are the people who really love the grunt suits. And I, generally speaking, have a preference for the more unique and designed and thematics.
Oh,
I like the
I
main
mean,
character mecha, generally speaking.
one of my favorite grunt suits is the Zeta Plus, the mass production model of a main character
Yeah, the
suit.
mass production Zeta. So, but like there are some people out there who are like, yeah, but what about the grunt suits? The grunt suits are my favorite. And like the Gelgoog to me is just like it scratches that itch for me so much. I may have a preference for the main character mobile suits, but the Gelgoog is just such a freaking trooper, and I'd never root for it because it's used by space Nazis, but like it's such a cool suit. Its place in the 1 Year War, and like when I'm thinking about like mech design and like mech deployment and like that sort of thing, the Gelgoog is almost always forefront in my mind.
Very good choice. Moving on to number 2. I'm going to go with something that has not been on either list. And the only reason it didn't make it into my top 5 is because I am a total noob to this particular media franchise. I have played about a quarter of the most recent game.
Oh, I
So,
was right. I know what this
yep,
is.
yep. It is the Armored Cores from Armored Core. I'm just going to generalize here because much like Lancer, much like Zoids, Armored Cores are designed to be modular. They are the video game equivalent of Lancer, where you are given a whole bunch of options to make the mechanical death machine of your dreams. And Fires of Rubicon is a fantastic game. It is beautiful to look at. It is a dream to control. And it's got an Ace Combat tier dialogue. I'm pretty sure a guy says, "Hey, buddy," to you at one point. Rusty is my boyfriend, and you can't take him away from me.
As someone who has bumped into Armored Core a little bit, I really want to get it. I just haven't gotten around to it, and you need a lot of time for it that I don't have currently.
It's also just kind of hard to, because it's all like on really difficult. You either need to have like old PlayStations, or you need to deal with really janky emulators.
Yeah. But I know Armored Core has the exact same energy as Ace Combat, where it's like it's a mech anime, but with uh like Ace Combat is a mech anime, but with planes, and it's like that sort of it's at once believable and grounded, but yet also so melodramatic
Oh yeah.
simultaneously somehow.
Uh-huh. I mean, the fact that in AC6, Fires of Rubicon, to be clear.
Yeah.
God
Armored
damn it.
Core, not Ace Combat.
Uh, you and I are going to be insufferable once I get further into Armored Core Jake.
As long as neither of us get into Assassin's Creed, I think we'll be fine.
Oh, but the fact that, like, unironically, you can have a moment where you do a mission, you go and blow up an entire base for one particular faction, and then literally the next mission, the faction that you just attacked is like, "Hey, we heard you're pretty good. Go attack that base for us." It is the most mercenary that I've ever felt in a video game. The opening mission is you running around a destroyed city so that you can find a downed mecha pilot to scavenge their license off of their black box from their destroyed mech. And then you shoot down an attack helicopter so it can't report that you were literally stealing dog tags. Dude, Miyazaki, I know that you're not usually this subtle, but wow.
Join a PMC today.
What's your number 2, Jake?
You know how I said I like the main character suits? Well, Sam cheated on the series portion of this. I'm cheating on the cool mech portion of this. There are two Gundam mobile suits that I love them both for a very, very specific reason. And it's the same reason despite how different they are. It's Gundam Crossbone Unit 1 and Gundam Calibarn.
Ooh, both very good choices.
I love them both for the exact same reason. They are both gimmicky as shit. They are hideously gimmicky. They are ostentatious.
Caliburn liteally rides on a broom.
Calibarn rides on a broom and has a witch hat. The Crossbone Gundam has a boot dagger, a cutlass, and a literal fucking crossbone on its back. It's a pirate robot in Gundam.
Yes.
With the main character of F91. Remember the series that had a shell casing brain, a mother who was running away from the conflict? Yeah, that's not played farcically in F91. And Crossbone doesn't really maintain that tone, but it's still a continuation of that. No, but the reason I love them isn't simply because they're gimmicky, because you can have a gimmicky robot and it's fine. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. No, the reason I love these two suits is, oh my god, they like judo throw into justifying these ridiculous gimmicks. For Crossbone, the reason why the suit is shaped the way it is because they needed extra thrust for the gravity of Jupiter where the series takes place. So they needed extra space for more verniers, and they're space pirates, so they just leaned into the aesthetic. Like, it was 100% a in-universe, this is the form, or this is the function, let's give it a good form too. And it completely justifies this pirate-ass mobile suit.
This incredibly stupid-looking machine.
And it's 100% a cool mobile suit design was devised, and then they had to retroactively justify how anyone would think to make this stupid thing, and they nailed it. And then Calibarn
I gotta just respect the craft.
Yeah, and then Calibarn is the same way. The witch's broom isn't really a witch's broom, it's a heavy beam cannon, and the thing that makes it look like a broom is where the air quotes bristles are extra verniers for more mobility because the weapon is big and heavy. And then the witch's hat is part of the gun format. But it's like, that's so silly, and yet it works because
she has truly become the witch from Mercury.
And they have these small mechanical justifications, and then from that point on, particularly in the case of Crossbone, it's either presumed or outright stated that it's like, it already looked like that, so we just leaned into the aesthetic. And you can get away with so much like that. It's like that next level of mech design that, is not often brought up. There are so many cool mobile suits out there that are just a cool robot. Hell, the RX-78 falls into that category. But like sometimes you get a stupid looking robot, a stupid cool robot that ends up getting in this really serious series because the artist and or writer found a really clever way of justifying the stupid gimmick.
Mhm.
And that is just peak design for me.
And before we get into the number ones, I want to do some quick honorable mentions. And actually, a design being so incredibly stupid that it's still genius is it's the only honorable mention I want to talk about, really. Because you'll remember from our criteria, I couldn't talk about Warhammer 40K because if you take the mecha out of it, it's still 40K. The mecha are pure aesthetic. They're just, hey, this is the biggest, dumbest, most brutal sci-fi universe we can possibly come up with. Hell, it's not even really science fiction. It's really bordering on science fantasy. What else can we put in? Put in a super fighting robot. If you take the Knights and the Legio Titanica out of 40K, very little changes. But wow, as everything else in 40K, if they are given an inch, they take a mile. They take a light year when it comes to the aesthetic because the Titans, I'm specifically talking about the Legio Titanica, which is the Imperium's mecha, the god machines of the Mechanicus. They're just walking cities with cathedrals on their backs and guns that, when they fire, shift tectonic plates. They are the biggest, the dumbest, the cheesiest shit you can possibly think of. Can your mecha alter the orbital trajectory of the planet when it shoots its gun? I didn't think so.
PK is so stupidly overpowered.
It's so dumb. It's so dumb. And like there's a thing going on in the 40K fandom right now. It's like, "Oh, well, how could the 40K fight the flood or how could the Imperium deal with yada yada?" That's really getting into my dad can beat up your dad territory, but for fandoms.
Oh.
The point being, taken in its totality, 40K's whole thing is being as big and as stupid as possible. I don't care if technically one thing can overcome it because of metaphysical hyper science bullshit. What I care about is that we have cathedral backed robots that when they shoot their guns, the tectonic plates shift.
Yeah, 40K is the One Punch Man of science fiction.
That's the best way to put it.
Yeah. Speaking of stupid and aesthetic, and you could remove it from the thing it's from, and nothing would change. My honorable mention is also one thing. It's literally every nightmare from Code Geass, except for all of the ones exclusively piloted by Lelouch, or the ones from that stupid Lelouch of the Resurrection movie, because God, those designs were awful. Yeah, no, nightmares are awesome. They deserved a better series. Quite frankly, a lot of the characters deserved a better series, but
They
Code Geass
really
is a mess.
the nightmares matter shockingly little.
They literally don't matter at all. If people were just shooting guns at each other, nothing would change.
Mhm.
Like, even the rivalry between Suzaku and Colin, you just put Colin in a mask and nothing changes.
Yeah. I mean, hell, if we didn't have the mechas, Susaku could do his signature move more often.
Flying spinny kick. Hey, to be fair, he made the mechs do that too. He made the Lancelot variants do that too. Because Code Geass is a serious series for mature audiences.
All right, so number one favorite mecha. Much like my number four in the series section, this is entirely nostalgia bait. This is entirely me going for aesthetics. But God, I love Exia so much. I don't know why, but Gundam Exia speaks to me on a level I can't really explain. I look at this thing and it makes me happy.
This is your child.
It is my child. He has every disease. He occasionally turns red and becomes very fast and shoots a big beam.
I think they have a cream for that one.
But yeah, I love Exia. That's it. That's all I've got. That's the tweet.
My number one is actually kind of similar in so far as it's also a very nostalgic pick. But the funny thing is, and man, when because it's like, I come back to Gundam Wing every now and again. And when I was a kid, coolest freaking mobile suit of all time was Gundam Heavy Arms.
Ooh, yeah.
It's the Daka Daka robot.
Heavy Arms has my favorite thing where it's like, ha, you thought this was my gimmick? No.
Well, that's actually exactly what it was. Because when I was a stupid kid and watching Gundam when I was way too young to understand what the hell was going on, Heavy Arms was my favorite because more Daka. And then I get older, I go to one of my rewatches of the series, I start looking up technical information on the Heavy Arms, and I find out, why the hell is the Heavy Arms the lightest out of all of the mobile suits except for Zero and Epion?
Because when it runs out of Daka and it
When it
drops,
runs out of bullets, it's the fastest mobile suit in the series except for Zero and Epion.
And that's why the acrobat that grew up in the circus pilots it.
Like, it's so genius. It is massive firepower to clear out the chaff, and if anything survives, it's going to be a powerful weapon piloted by a skilled fast reaction time pilot, so Heavy Arms sheds all of its extra weight and fights in close quarters very with speed and precision. It is such a genius design. And, like, when I found that out, because I mean, like, I've always loved Death Scythe, and maybe you can throw Death Scythe in as an honorable mention, but honestly, that one's just nostalgic to me,
It's
because
a
Duo
good
was
one.
my favorite character. But Heavy Arms is such a geniusly devious design. I love that suit so much.
Like it feels like such an obvious gimmick in hindsight, but at first blush, it's like, haha, you thought this was my strength? You fool.
Well, yeah, because I mean, what else would Heavy Arms' strength be? It's Heavy Arms. It's in the name. The guns are its strength, right?
Something about that concept is so captivating. The idea of just like, I have made the stupidest deception of all time, and you have fallen for it.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Heavy Arms at first blush is a stupid little kid's mobile suit design. Add more gun so people don't take it seriously and don't think about the fact that if it spends all of its bullets, its dry weight is significantly lighter than things with half of the armor. It will kill you in melee combat if it's not weighed down by its ammo.
Yeah.
And if you survive the ammo, that's the perfect opponent to be using speed and agility against.
It is hilariously stupid in its concept, but it is incredibly efficient in its design. And that's what makes it beautiful.
Yes, it is. It is. It has always been my favorite mobile suit and always been my favorite mecha.
My favorite from Wing is Death Scythe, and that's because I'm an edgy fuck.
Don't worry. That one also has been a long time favorite of mine. Duo is my favorite character. I love Duo. Duo is just so much fun.
And this brings us to the end of our show. Thank you, everybody, once again for tuning into the Over Manga Cast. As always, you can find us on all of your social medias where we are at Over Manga Cast.
You can also find us on YouTube where you can like, comment, and subscribe. The episodes go up on YouTube on a 2-week delay, so if you want to catch up with our up-to-date stuff, you can head over to overmangacast.com, which even has a section where you can give us comments, give us recommendations, tell us to actually talk about manga. We might do that.
And we appreciate reviews in any and all forms on your podcatcher of choice. Please let us know how we are doing and use that as a medium to tell us stuff to talk about. If you have a mecha anime that you think that Jake and I would get unreasonably obsessed with, please let us know. It's going to make Matt and Jay suffer, but I know what you're
That's
here
funny.
for. That's very funny. And join us next Thursday where we'll be talking about something, I'm sure.
Maybe it'll be Mecha again. Who knows?
Who knows? Either way, we'll see you all next Thursday. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
And we don't have to wait for the other two to do a bit, so we can just end it there.